Field Vision Sports presents The Matchup with Sasha Bushka.
Kyler Murray kind of looks like a little kid running from his parents when he scrambles in the pocket.
Scott Bushka.
I had to tell my daughter that today wasn't really about her first day of school. It was really about me and the launch of our company.
And Cody Alexander.
Randomly, no. As somebody who's been around football my entire life, I literally can say that I've never smelled smelling salts, nor have I ever seen anybody actually have smelling salts. I'm sure that they were used at some point.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome in to the matchup by Field Vision Sports. Excited to be with you as always, taking you back through week 5 of the NFL season and looking ahead to week 6. I'm joined by our head of football ops, Cody Alexander, and I'm Sasha Bushka, your host, joined by also the man with the longest beard in the Bushka family at this moment, Scott Bushka.
What's up, fellas? How you doing?
Good.
I was wondering, Sasha, if you were going to bring up, this is, if you're watching on YouTube, I know there's a lot of you watching on YouTube. This is the first time Sasha's been without a beard in 10 years. Is it 10 years?
It's about a decade. And even at that point, I shaved it once and grew it back. So it's really about a decade and a half.
He looks like a child. Like
yeah.
Little like Felix, our producer, said he cried a little bit. I think you look great, Sasha. I'm sure you've had younger women picking you up at the bars, things like that.
No, I haven't been to a bar yet since I did it, but I'm imagining I'll get carded here shortly.
The good folks over there at Emerson Biggins, I'm sure, are going to be very taken aback by who the young man is walking in the establishment come kickoff for the Seahawks-Niners Thursday night game tomorrow night.
Or first pitch for the Royals game tonight. Major League Baseball playoffs going on full force. We had a little Chiefs and Royals at the same time on Monday night. It was a good time in the Bushka household.
Dude, Kansas City is the epicenter of sports right now. New York sucks. Kansas City's the epicenter.
All right, let's dive into it. We got a lot of things to talk about that happened in week 5 that are going to happen in week 6. But I want to start with a city that Scott just mentioned. New York is a dumpster fire. I don't think that's the phrase you used, but the Jets, after a loss in London to Minnesota, where they tried valiantly to come back but couldn't quite get it done, have relieved Robert Saleh of his duties and moved on to Jeff Ulbrich as their interim head coach. Woody Johnson, is he just and I'll go to Scott here. Is Woody Johnson just out of patience on this and maybe thinks his team is a little bit better than it is?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. By the way, I'm surprised you came to me first. That's really, I don't know. Cody's got to feel a little, maybe it's because of his record and our picks so far, which we'll talk about later, but there is a lot going on in this situation, and it's kind of getting worse and like more conspiracy theorists by the day. Let me start with this. I don't think Robert Saleh is a good coach. He's 20-36 over his course of being a coach as the New York Jets. And I do think Woody Johnson's getting impatient. I think 100% the right thing to do was to fire Saleh after last year, not to fire him 5 games into this year. But to me, and I've been a pretty regular critic of Aaron Rodgers, like to me, this is an Aaron Rodgers problem more than anything. And like I said multiple times before we got into the season, Aaron Rodgers forgot how to be a leader and a leader of men and to put the team and others before himself a long time ago. Like it became about Aaron Rodgers a long time ago. And that's important because he clearly is running the show here in New York, right? Like, why would you fire Saleh and not fire Nathaniel Hackett? Their offense is clearly, like, their defense isn't the issue. Their offense is clearly the issue. Their offense is clearly in the Stone Age in terms of the way it uses motion, some of the concepts they run, etc. So, but you handed your keys over to a 40-year-old quarterback who's not a leader, who wanted to bring in all of his buddies, and who's not as good as he used to be. So, like, you can fire Robert Saleh, which, again, I don't think he's a great coach, but it's not going to solve the issue. You're still going to have Nat Hackett, an aging quarterback, and a defense that's probably a little bit worse, like after firing Saleh. So it's to your point, like a dumpster fire, a shit show, whatever you want to call it. Like, they've had 5 coaches in the last 11 years, and it's not a real well-run organization.
Yeah, and to your point with Saleh, and I'll just say this, like, a lot of the complaints around Saleh are actually complaints around the handling of Aaron Rodgers. A lot of people feel like he just is spineless. He does some weird things, like HBO on Hard Knocks. He looked like he was playing to the camera, some things like that, which you never know when you do Hard Knocks. I mean, those NFL guys will tell you, like, you never know. When you put a camera in front of some people just end up getting weirder. Some people end up getting more quiet. You just never know how people are going to react. He just didn't look really good. Everything looked forced. Everything kind of looked acting on that. But everything to me goes back to this relationship with Aaron Rodgers and the owner. And to me, what this looks like is, I envision this as, if you've ever seen Office Space, they call Robert Saleh in, you got, the GM and the owner there, and they're asking, Saleh, like, what is it that you exactly do here? Right? Because Jeff Ulbrich is running the defense, and he has been. And Saleh really doesn't allude to that, but Ulbrich is the one that's been calling it, and really has been kind of the catalyst for that success. Then you have Aaron Rodgers, which you go, look, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, probably the next closest athlete to him in terms of being a GM, is probably LeBron, in the fact that he was able to get all of those offensive guys. I mean, to me, like the Randall Cobb, even Lazard, who is not that great of a possession receiver on the outside, and kind of was fading away when he was with the Packers. Like, a lot of this comes down to the fact where you got Aaron Rodgers pulling a lot of the strings. I heard the comment of, he actually, the owner actually talked to Aaron Rodgers before this even happened. So, this could have ended up being one of those, like, oh, wait a second, no, it's not really my guy Hackett, because Rodgers doesn't want what happened in Green Bay, which is he got told, you really don't know what you're talking about, by LaFleur, and LaFleur was able to prove it. That's why the motion rates went up. So again, this is Rodgers just saying, kind of being the crotchety old man saying, get off my lawn.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is, like, it's an evaluation of alternatives, and Cody, maybe you just kind of answered it there. But when I'm thinking about firing Robert Saleh, you usually, if you fire your head coach, you're going to make one of the coordinators the head coach. And Saleh's a defensive minded guy. So you think, like, Ulbrich, like, what's the change there? But then you're not going to make Nathaniel Hackett the head coach. That's for sure. And I think Jeff Ulbrich, I think he probably fires Nathaniel Hackett. Although it depends on if Rodgers lets him. And so that'll be kind of like the first test. Maybe not fires him, but like lets somebody else call the plays. But that'll be kind of the first test of whether he's going to stand up to Rodgers more than Saleh would. But it'll be an interesting case study in who's running the organization there.
Yeah, I would be shocked if he's going to stand up to Aaron Rodgers, or even be empowered to stand up to Aaron Rodgers as an interim coach. But, like, Rodgers is the issue here, and I have been probably overly tough on Aaron Rodgers for many years now. But the biggest issue I have with him is there is zero accountability. Aaron Rodgers never takes accountability. It's always someone else's fault. He's always blaming. And the formula in the NFL has been clear for years and years and years. It's the marriage of quarterback and coach. The marriage of quarterback and coach, like Brady and Belichick, Reed and Mahomes, McDermott and Josh Allen, Harbaugh and Jackson. Like, that is the only formula that works, right? And Aaron Rodgers hasn't been able to be on the same page as his coach for a long time because everything's about him and he never takes accountability when things don't go right. And they haven't gone right for him for a long time. So it's like, as long as that's who's in charge and that's who you have leading your locker room and all the other people in the room know it, like, it's not going to work.
I found it interesting that Woody Johnson came out and said, they asked him if he talked to Aaron Rodgers about the decision. He said, well, I talked to Aaron yesterday, but we didn't talk about that. Well, like, what are you talking about then? Like, first of all, you're firing your head coach tomorrow, so you're on the phone with your quarterback and you're not going to tell him. Second of all, like, what does an owner and a quarterback have to talk about? Like, are you talking about the weather? Like, that doesn't make any sense. It's just one of those, like, somebody gets a hold of a phone record and finds out you talked to him, you wanted to cover your bases there.
Yeah, it's complete BS.
Yeah, and to me, here's the thing: there are only 32 of these jobs. You get gifted the interim job with literally 2/3 of the season left. I think it's more of an indictment on what we know is probably true, which is Rodgers is pulling the strings in terms of not getting Hackett fired, being in control. But I'm just going to say this: as we go longer into the season, Rodgers is going to lose less and less leverage if he continues to play at the rate that he's playing, because then then at the end of the day, like, you got to really think about it this way. If you're Ulbrich and you're sitting here and this is your one shot, you've been waiting for this for a while, because Saleh has never really come out and said that you're really the guy calling it. You're the one. And most people in the NFL know that that's true, but you know how this business works. These owners want to hire a really smart guy, and they need the media behind them when they do this. But this is an offense that, is not that great and has been very stagnant. You've got two really good running backs and you can't run the ball. So I think the longer we go, if Ulbrich waits until maybe the bye week to do this, that's when I would see it. Or he can just say, look, I know I'm not going to get this job anyway. I'll just go ahead and get fired. That's where I think you got to be. This is where it's going to get interesting, because he can't just fire the offensive coordinator without the owner kind of signing off on it. So the longer that this goes on and the more Rodgers is stale and Hackett doesn't get fired, the more we really know that the truth is probably Aaron Rodgers kind of did this whole thing.
Yeah. I want to get into the power rankings here in a second, but just last thing on this, Woody Johnson had said that he thinks he has, and I kind of alluded to this in the beginning, but he thinks he has the best team that he's had in 25 years, like personnel wise, I guess is what he means. And that's why he had to fire Saleh and like get first of all, that's kind of a referendum on what the Jets have had over the last 25 years. But do you think, and I'll go to Cody on this, do you think Woody Johnson's overestimating the amount of talent on this Jets roster?
I think offensively, yes. The offensive line is really not as good as they think it is. I mean, if you add Hassan Reddick in there and you get for this is kind of the spark, right? Like the whole Hassan Reddick saga of him going to Japan and playing cosplay and not going to play for New York and has not shown up yet. He was kind of the answer to fixing, hey, we're going to put somebody over on the other side. We're going to build ourselves a lot like the 49ers where we have an elite D line. I think defensively they've had some injuries, but defensively I think they're fine. They didn't sign Whitehead, which is a problem, who's now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But other than that, I think defensively. Offensively, yeah, I don't think the talent's there. And especially in a stale offense, in a static offense, you just don't have any dynamic players. And even their number one receiver isn't number one. You're 31st in DVOA rushing, and you have two really good running backs. You have a rookie who is really good, and then you have Breece Hall, who everybody knows is a star, and you're not using them. That's an indictment more on Rodgers, because we know who's calling that offense, and it's Rodgers. Rodgers is the one that's checking it.
Yeah, that comment by Woody Johnson is 100% based on Aaron Rodgers being an elite quarterback, which he's not. He's not, and he hasn't been for years. And the fact that Aaron Rodgers left the Packers and the Packers got better is like such an indictment on him. And I'm just going to keep saying it because I feel so strongly about it. Like, he's not an elite player and he's an even worse leader. And you can't have a quarterback who's bad at both of those.
Yeah, I think that says it all. A lot of dysfunction there for the Jets. They're only 2-3, so if Ulbrich can kind of right the ship and get them winning some games, they still have a chance. But the AFC East doesn't look as good as it did heading into the season. The Bills have lost a couple in a row now. The Dolphins, obviously, we see what's going on in Miami without Tua. They're kind of hapless. We'll see if he comes back during the course of this season, but still looks like a long haul for the Jets. I'm going to add.
They have wins against the Patriots and Titans.
Right.
Congratulations, Aaron Rodgers.
All right. Let's shift gears. Let's look at some teams that have impressed over time. First thing I want to do, I added Felix Johnson to the stage. Felix, I saw you doing a little mini celebration back there when Scott said that Aaron Rodgers is no longer an elite quarterback. Just a quick thought on that, because you seem pretty excited about somebody else saying that for a change.
I just think it's shocking that anybody would think that a 40-year-old coming off an Achilles surgery who wasn't good the last time we saw him play, and what Scott said with the Packers getting better after Aaron Rodgers left. Like, it only makes sense that he's no longer that guy, and we expected him to be that guy in New York. He was talking about Super Bowls and MVP trophies and whatnot, and it didn't come true. And that's unfortunate that we're seeing the fall of one of the legends, but that's what's happening. And it was just a delusion that he was ever going to be that good in New York.
Why do you think? I don't know. I could stay on this topic forever. So I know Sasha's trying to move us off, but why do we even call Rodgers a legend? What has he ever done to deserve to be called a legend like some of these other people?
I mean, he's won 4 MVPs, and there's only one guy in NFL history that's won more. And he's one of the most talented arms that we've ever seen. And so, I mean, based off of that, but we haven't seen that in, 2-3 years now.
Yeah, I think the regression over anything. I think Tom Brady ruined some of these older quarterbacks. I think Tom Brady kind of ruined Rodgers in terms of these guys thought, okay, maybe I could hang on a little bit longer. Rodgers has got the ego to say, I'm still elite. I can still do this. I want to prove to people that I can do this and I can call it. I think too, the thing that's to me is different than Rodgers is that, Peyton Manning really did run the show, and he ran it until he just couldn't throw the ball anymore. I mean, he got Adam Gase a head coaching job. That's how good of an offensive coordinator he was. And I'll never forget being at the Broncos facility and watching him run a practice. He was the offensive coordinator. He ran the practice. I think Rodgers is trying to prove that I'm just as brainy as he is. I'm just as, I can keep healthy just like Brady. I can continue to do this on and on and on. And I think what we're seeing really is kind of in irony is exactly what happened to Favre. Favre was awesome until he wasn't, and that cliff hit and he fell off. And, we got to see Peyton Manning ride off into the sunset. We got to see Tom Brady kind of ride off in a little bit of a sunset. He probably should have retired after they won the Super Bowl. But we see these guys they stayed until they saw the cliff and they walked back from it. This is another example of a guy that just is like, I'm trying to continue to do that. I mean, I think, to me, to be honest with you, I think Rodgers will play starting quarterback until someone just finally tells him, hey, man, you can't play anymore.
Until he's the vice president of the United States. So
he'll just continue to blame people for his sucking for years to come.
Yeah. No, they keep running the wrong routes, Scott. Speaking of running the wrong routes or writing the wrong words, Felix Johnson put out some power rankings this week. Week 5 power rankings. I'll just give a quick rundown. Tampa Bay and Green Bay dropped out of the rankings for whatever reason, especially Green Bay. Honorable mention for Cincinnati Bengals and Chicago Bears. And then 10-1, Buffalo Bills, Atlanta Falcons, Commanders, 49ers, Cowboys at 6, Texans at 5, Ravens at 4, Detroit Lions off the bye, stayed at 3, Minnesota Vikings and Kansas City Chiefs at number 1. I'll start on this one. I'm going to go just outside of the rankings. If you say someone is an honorable mention, that leads me to believe that they would be like 11 or 12 if you kept the rankings going. The Cincinnati Bengals are 1-4, Felix. And I think you're falling into the trap that a lot of people fall in. And Cody will appreciate me saying this is, well, you have your three phases of the game, but taking away special teams, there's two sides of the ball in football. If you're scoring 35 points every single game and still losing, your defense sucks. And like that has to matter. And so like it's like the Chiefs and Vikings are both 5-0, and they've had some sputtering on offense here and there, especially the Chiefs, but the defense is winning them games. And then you got a team like the Bengals that's scoring. Joe Burrow threw 5 touchdown passes. They look great, but they're 1-4. It matters what both sides of the ball do. Defend Cincinnati Bengals as an honorable mention.
Here's the thing. I can't because it was a typo. I didn't mean to leave them in there. I did not mean. I thought that because I kind of like to write the power rankings as Sundays go on. I thought they were about to beat the Ravens, and so I was like, "Oh, they're about to both be 2-3. Whatever, we're going on." I made a mistake. I'm sorry, and honestly, I think I probably wrote it as Evan McPherson missed the kick in the whole thing. So that's on me. It was a typo and a mistake. I did not mean to do it. They shouldn't be there. Other than they missed the kick.
That makes me mad at myself that when I was editing it, I didn't like text you and berate you then. I was like, oh, I'll just do it on
what the hell is this?
At that time, we could have fixed it.
Is this Aaron Rodgers level accountability here? Typo? It was a typo?
No, it was
more
like
I
it was
typed
me.
the
It was
wrong
on me.
thing
I made a
in
mistake. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
That's fair.
I thought
That's
Evan
fair.
McPherson, a good kicker, was going to make a kick. I'm sorry.
Hey,
that's annoying.
by the way,
that's annoying because
that was
I
all
wanted
on the
to.
holder.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's annoying because I
yeah.
wanted to talk about how bad Zach Taylor's been or
Yes.
Lou Anarumo.
Yeah.
You can still talk about it if you want. It's part of looking back. Speaking of which, like we were going to get into a conversation about other coaches on the hot seat since Saleh got fired. Would Zach Taylor be at the top of your candidates there, Scott?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready to say he's at the top of the candidates, but what I wrote he's probably at the top of the candidates with this other guy I'm going to mention, which is what I wrote in my article is that he's giving off a lot of Nick Sirianni vibes right now, which is to say a coach who had some early success riding momentum and a really good roster, right? That seems like as they've settled into the job, doesn't have the chops to like continue the sustained success or control and handle the locker room in a way that's required to run a consistently winning program like a John Harbaugh or a McDermott or an Andy Reid. So that, like, to me, the Bengals feel like a team that has a really good offense, has quite frankly a really good roster, is struggling on defense a little bit, but it seems like Zach Taylor's lost control of the wheel a little bit.
Yeah, he was when we talked about this pre-show, like this, he was the one guy that I felt if you're going to look at everything, who are the two coaches that should be considered for the hot seat, he's probably number one after Robert Saleh, obviously getting fired. But then two, I think Antonio Pierce with the Raiders. If you go and you look, and I think a lot of it has to do with controlling the roster and it a little bit differently. I think with the Bengals, what really bothers me is that we're looking at an offense that is very stale. If you don't have the two outside receivers, it doesn't work. You can have a Jamar Chase go off like he does every once in a while, where I have like almost 200 yards of receiving, but then you look up at the scoreboard and they still lost. Or he goes for 157 yards passing, but then they don't score any touchdowns. And I think that's the frustrating part. And again, it goes back to roster management. You let one of the best interior defensive linemen walk, and you thought, okay, well, we've got these two defensive ends that we feel like can do it. And one is doing really well. The other is kind of falling off a little bit. And then the secondary is a mess. The secondary is an absolute mess since Jesse Bates walked. That's why, again, when you have an elite player, you pay him and you don't let him walk. And when you do, this is what you get. I mean, they can't figure out what to do with Dax Hill. They put him at safety last year. It didn't work. Now they're putting him at corner. They're running a bunch of cover one to try and make things a little bit more simpler. But that's not what has made him great. You know, when we think about the Bengals, we think of like Bengals versus Chiefs and kind of, you know, getting Mahomes cooked and where they owned Arrowhead, right? But then now we're looking at it now and it's like, man, there's a bunch of defensive problems. And I think a lot of it comes back to roster management. And then again, you got Taylor Britt, the corner, you know, talking about collegiate offense, and then they get smoked. You know, you just, like you said, controlling the roster, but then also too, if you're an offensive coach, and you can only function if, you know, you're kind of like the Dolphins. You can only function if everybody's healthy. And if that's the case, knowing that football is a game of attrition, that's just not going to work.
Yeah. I'll go to Scott here. Scott, do you have any bones to pick with Felix's power rankings?
Yeah, I was on the Bengals bone, which seems like it was a typo. I thought, Felix, I'm going to give you a little compliment here. I thought 1 through 5 was really pretty solid. Nice work. Seems like no typos in there. I feel bad saying this, but my issue is going to be the same issue I had last week, which is how the hell are Cowboys number 6? Right? They now they got to win on Sunday against a not very good Steelers team, right? On the last play of the game, there's clearly, with Dak Prescott throwing to everyone besides his all-world elite receiver, there's clearly dysfunction between the two of them. Their schedule is really brutal coming up. Like I think they were one loss. They were a loss against Pittsburgh away from being done on Sunday night, so I think that was good. But to me, they are way closer to 15th in this list than they are 6th.
I think for me, it was pretty impressive for the Cowboys to win a defensive battle without their best defensive player and probably their best overall player in Micah Parsons. And in regards to Dak Prescott, of course, he was really bad with the turnovers and wasn't connecting with CeeDee Lamb. But when it came down to mattering the most, he recovered the fumble and then throws the touchdown the next play. He mattered when it mattered the most. And when you look at the NFC, who is the NFC like really looking like? The 49ers aren't nearly as good. We'll see with the Lions when they come back off the bye. The Eagles aren't as great. The NFC South, we like the Falcons right now because Kirk Cousins just threw for 509 and the Buccaneers are who they are. Who else in the NFC is that good? And then the Vikings are who they are and they're properly placed.
Yeah. Just give me the entire NFC North. It's the only division I like there.
Hey, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And that's why I think the Cowboys, they're going to be fine because Dak Prescott, no matter how you slice it, is a top 3 or so quarterback in the NFC. And who else is going to – the Rams – Matthew Stafford might be a top 3 quarterback, but the Rams are good enough to support him there. So the Cowboys are going to sit fine in the NFC because there's nobody else.
Cody.
Yes.
Gun to your head. Who wins the NFC East if you had to pick it right now?
I'm going to go with the Commanders.
Yeah.
Yeah, because here's the thing with the Commanders. I think the defense is going to get better. I think Quinn and Witt are figuring out what they can do and what they can't do. They're actually changing, which I think in this, when you get an older coach like that, and then when you get a defensive coordinator that's kind of been more of a secondary guy, really his whole entire career, you kind of look at this and you look at, okay, well, they really only ran cover one. They're doing things completely different. They're running a lot more zone. They're doing a ton of cover two to really protect those corners. They have long corners. They're just not great in man coverage. And so they're figuring it out. They've got a work-like mentality. They're still not great on defense, but you can tell every week they're getting better. And he's kind of figured out that, hey, if we can get to maybe like 16th in DVOA defense, our offense is going to score 30 points a game. And if that's the case, then this is one of those where maybe you double down on offense. This is a case. Do I think they're going to win the Super Bowl? Absolutely not. I think you have to have an elite defense to win the Super Bowl. But is this a team that we could look up and be like, wow, they won 11, maybe even 12 games down the road? To me, I think it's the Commanders.
I think with Washington, what's not scares me, but in the next 2 weeks they play Baltimore and then Chicago, two pretty good defenses, and they haven't played a good defense quite yet up to those two levels yet. And so we'll see. And then if I'm willing to be wrong about Washington, we just haven't seen them play against an elite defense, despite them putting up 30 and 40 and whatever. Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels are doing a great job. But at the same time, let's see it against some real stiff competition like Baltimore, like Chicago's going to present in 2 weeks.
I mean, the thing is, the unbalanced schedule matters so much in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the Commanders playing a last place schedule versus the Cowboys playing. So the Cowboys' next 6 games versus the Lions, at the Niners, at Atlanta, versus the Eagles, versus the Texans, at Washington. Like, they might win one of those games.
Right.
Where I'm not staring at the Commanders' schedule in front of me, but they haven't played anyone. A big part of the reason they haven't played anyone is because they're playing a last place schedule. Like, it makes a big difference in the NFL.
Yeah, and we'll see
with the Vikings and the Lions.
For sure. We'll see with the Cowboys. I mean, I think that Dak Prescott is one of the 7 or 8 best quarterbacks in the league, and most of those teams do pretty good. So,
which, by the way, the Commanders sandwiched in between that Ravens and Bears game have the Panthers, so maybe a little room for error. And then after the Bears, they have the Giants and the Steelers. So, I mean, I think they'll be favored in all of those games except against the Ravens because the Bears is at home. So
I'm just more worried about
if they come down to earth or start reeling some off.
Yeah, I'm just more worried about the individual matchups of Washington's offense versus Pittsburgh defense versus Baltimore defense, and we'll see. Jaden Daniels has been playing great. You play who's on your schedule, and then balling out.
Yeah, Cody, you got any bones to pick in the power rankings?
Yeah, first off, the Texans are too low. I know they're number 5, but they should be at least 3. This is, if there is a 1B in the AFC, it's got to be them. That defense it's an elite defense. The offense, the only reason why you can put pause on it is that the offense is struggling a little bit. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that you have this kind of 3-headed monster at receiver. Mixon gets hurt. And so they're kind of, Slovic is trying to figure out what to do. I think he'll get it figured out. They were able to figure it out last year with a rookie quarterback. I think Stroud is legit. I think Stroud we will look back 15 years from now when he's retiring and be like, okay, he's one of the greats. He's so cool, calm, and collected that I think that he's going to push in the next couple of years to be considered one of the elite quarterbacks right there along with kind of Allen and Mahomes and Lamar. So I think to have them at 4-1 at 5 and have some people ahead of them. Now, I mean, I get the Lions have only lost 1 game, but if you put them on a neutral site, I would think we would all probably take the Texans over the Lions. So that would be one that I have. Again, we've already talked about the Cowboys. I just don't trust anybody that can't stop the run. I know that they have been getting better, but it's just one of those things where I feel like the Cowboys got lucky with the Steelers, where they caught a team that has some major locker room issues that we kind of have an idea of what's going on. Some of the stuff leaking out of there is just very un-Steeler-like. Most of that time, Mike Tomlin is pretty tight-lipped. Those guys are all flying around. I mean, this has consistently been a team that hasn't had a quarterback, and he finds a way to win. I think maybe there's some major issues. It's not like we haven't seen a crazy receiver come out from the Steelers before.
Exactly.
That's pretty typical. They usually get it figured out, but I think like they caught him on a week where they
had the weather delay too.
Yeah, and I think it was just a weird game too. And again, this is a Steelers defense that is relatively static, and I think the Cowboys do really well against defenses. Just sit there, and Dak kind of has an idea. I mean, hell, they rushed for 87 yards. The one thing that I would just say is that I think you probably need to start keeping a better eye on the Bears. They're undefeated at home. They have an elite defense. If Caleb Williams starts to kind of have the same kind of rise that we've seen with Bo Nix, kind of figuring it out, pushing the ball a little deeper, targeting guys that DJ Moore, for instance, kind of getting them the ball where they need to. This is a team that you're going to look up and you're going to say, okay, they might be a little bit dangerous. They might be pushing the Lions and the Packers, especially for that number 2 spot.
Cody, I don't think you realize how ready I am for the Bears to get going. I've been a Caleb Williams guy since his freshman year at Oklahoma. So I hope they're going to be good. Like, they've got a decent couple weeks. They're playing the Jags in London, so we'll see. Then they have the Commanders. We'll see if that defense improves enough by then. There's 2 more wins, and all of a sudden the Rookie of the Year conversation is different because both guys will be 4-2. Caleb would have the win over Jaden, so that's a separate discussion. With the Steelers, I think we're just seeing the Steelers are going to play up and down to their competition wherever they go. Mike Tomlin's going to have a good defense, and they turned the ball over 3 times against Dak Prescott, who is a good quarterback. So, I mean, and then, like you said, the crazy receivers, Martavis Bryant, Chase Claypool. And so let's just keep going down the list, all the way back to Lynch Swan if we want to. But I think that's just kind of what the Steelers are going to do. But 2 weeks ago, we were all talking about the Steelers like they were a pretty good team. They were in the power rankings at like 6 or so because they were 3-0. Now they're back-to-back losses. I think they're still going to be the Steelers. So, and then with the Texans, I said it in the article, but I think they're a junior high school production of the Kansas City Chiefs, where they're winning all of these really, really close games, but we just don't know if that's really who they are quite yet. We know the Chiefs are going to win close games because that's just what the Chiefs do, and they've done it to the tune of 3 Super Bowls over the last half decade. We'll see with the Texans. And they're losing Nico Collins for a month now, him going on the IR. We'll see with the Texans. I think they're going to be good. The AFC South is the mess that it usually is. So they're going to be fine when it comes to that. But them winning the close games hasn't convinced me quite yet. And Buffalo screwing up as much as they did at the end of that game, throwing 3 straight incompletions with a completely concussed quarterback by the name of Josh Allen. That was kind of more of a loss on the Bills than it was a win on the Texans in that particular instance, for me at least, because C.J. Stroud turned the ball over enough and they gave the Bills an opportunity to win. The Bills just let it slip through their fingers.
Yeah. Can I pop in here a second in defense of Felix? I don't disagree that the Texans are good. There's no way I'm taking them over Detroit on a neutral field. Like I take Detroit every day of the week. By the way, we already saw them against Minnesota, and they got the shit kicked out of them. So then you just start saying, like, do I think they're better than Baltimore? And I think it's because you got Baltimore at 4. And I think it's close, but still give me Lamar, Derrick Henry, and the pedigree of the Ravens right now in a big game over the Texans. We saw that in the playoffs last year. So, like, I agree the Texans are good. I also really like your junior varsity analogy of the Chiefs because, like, you got to show us more for us to believe it first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a really good junior high team or junior varsity. Scott at least gave him junior varsity. Felix had him in middle school. But nonetheless, good discussion on power rankings there. We're more than halfway through here. We want to look forward a little bit. So we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we'll give you some picks, a prop, a game pick, and over-under. We'll start looking ahead to Week 6. You're listening to The Matchup by Field Vision Sports. Stay with us. Welcome back into The Matchup by Field Vision Sports. Excited to be back with you. We took a look at Felix's power rankings, talked about Robert Saleh and the firing. We're going to move forward now to some Week 6 action. As we like to do, we'll give some picks, game pick and over-under, and a prop bet to go into this next week. Then we'll get into some of the key matchups. The primetime games are kind of stinkers this week, but we'll talk about them a little bit. At least the Sunday night game is. But I want to start with a little accounting. Through 2 weeks of doing it this week, Scott, you're 3-3. You went
average
1-2 last, I believe.
Been average my whole life, Sasha. I'm also 5'9", if the listeners would like to know.
GWG.
People will sometimes forget that average is better than awful. So, speaking of which, Cody, you're 0-6.
I thought the point of this game was to lose. I did not know we were trying to win. I'm sorry. I'm going to try better this week.
It's like golf. Go negative.
Yeah, I thought we were playing golf. All those negative signs next to the betting and all that stuff, I thought that's what we were trying to do.
Yeah, well, there is a little something you can do in gambling called fading someone. So if people were just taking the opposite of your picks, then you're in good shape. I'm
Just
5-1.
trying my best.
Went 2-1 last week. Yeah, you've got to. But let's dive into this week. On Thursday Night Football, we've got Seattle at San Francisco. On Sunday night, we've got Cincinnati at New York, the Giants variety. That's kind of a stinker for a Sunday night game. And then we've got Buffalo at New York, the Jets variety on Monday night. That'll be fun just because of the Saleh firing, but also not the best game that we could get on a Monday night. The game I'm looking at in the main slate, and it's in the 3:00 window, is that Detroit at Dallas game. That should be really interesting. And then an NFC South showdown of two teams in on the noon window of two teams trying to keep pace at this point, both having lost to Atlanta, is Tampa at New Orleans, although New Orleans may not have their starting quarterback. So before we dive into picks, Cody, any of those games that catch your eye that you kind of want to break down for us?
Yeah, I think one of the most underrated games this week is actually going to be the Chargers and the Broncos. And that's not just because I'm biased because I'm a Broncos fan, but I think what we're seeing is kind of Bo Nix has been able to push the ball down the field. You are going to get elite defensive play on both sides of the ball. If you go and look at almost every single advanced metric, the Chargers and the Broncos are going to be there. The Broncos for sure. The Vikings are by far the number one defense in the NFL. The Broncos could probably make an argument for number two. The Chargers are definitely in the top five of that. This is a game that I think if you like physical football play, this is going to be a game that will be fun to watch. I'm a little surprised that the Chargers are a -3 favorite to go into this game. This is a game that I think that the Broncos could easily win, especially the way that their secondary has been playing, and if Bo Nix continues to play the way that he's been able to.
Yeah, -3 on the road indicates that Vegas thinks the Chargers are about 6 points better than Denver. I don't know if that's shown on the field so far this year.
Yeah, the Chargers are kind of
really good value. Yeah, that feels like really good value at like Denver being dogs at home as well as they played. Sorry, Cody, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it to me. I would assume that this is probably a pick'em game, as close as you could probably get it in my eye. Just because Herbert has the ability to do some special things when they want to. The defense with the Chargers has been playing relatively well. But again, this to me, if it was like Denver -1.5 or something like that, like I could see that. But -3 for the Chargers is a little interesting to me.
Yeah, the only thing that's because I was thinking about that game a lot for my pick. The only thing that's giving me hesitation is the Chargers being off a bye.
Yes.
And wondering if they're going to come in pretty dialed in. But Sasha,
go ahead. But the one thing I was going to add to that is just like the Broncos are blitzing at an unbelievable high rate, and they're playing man coverage behind it, which that tends to be a recipe for disaster the later you go in the season because you don't want to have track meets. That's the last thing I'll say.
Yeah, I just don't. I mean, that's super good insight. I just don't know that. Do the Chargers have the weapons at receiver to beat them doing that? I'm not sure. Like what we saw happen against the Chiefs. Like I think the Chargers are much more built to like pick you apart underneath with Ladd and McConkey, doing little 5-yard curl routes. So, anyways, that actually makes me feel better about the Broncos against the Chargers offense. Sasha, the game you did not mention. I agree the primetime slate is less interesting this week.
I see it. I know what I missed.
Which I think is probably the most interesting, is Ravens Commanders in the early window on Sunday, which that's the game I'm most interested in from the standpoint of like Ravens clearly finding their footing. They're probably, based on anyone's opinion, the top 3 team in the AFC, with the Commanders, who everyone's excited about, but I think we all agree haven't really played anyone great up to this point. I'm really excited to see what Jaden Daniels does against that defense. The thing that I'm thinking about is, what he's been really good at is evading pressure and being able to hurt you when he can get outside the pocket against pressure. The Bills did a pretty good job of keeping Josh Allen contained a couple weeks ago. And Josh Allen has been the best of that over his career. But so I'm really interested to see what he and Kingsbury do against that Ravens defense, and just wondering out loud if the Ravens are just going to bludgeon them with the run for 4 quarters.
Which is a possibility.
Yeah. Definitely an interesting game going into Baltimore. And what do they call that? The Beltway? Little Beltway showdown, next door neighbors playing each other. So should be fun there. We'll start with we'll go in reverse order of record. So Cody, why don't you run down your 3 picks for us for this Sunday?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to go with Robinson. We're going to stick with Washington. I'm going to go Robinson under rushing against Baltimore. The one thing Baltimore does really, really well is stop the run. They've kind of been that since Mike McDonald's been back there. I think that this is a game where they're probably going to be trailing. This is also a game where they're going to stop the run first. They're going to force Jaden Daniels to beat them throwing the ball. They're going to make Cliff Kingsbury call up shot plays and passes and things like that. So to me, this is a game where I typically would say one of the engines for this Washington offense that a lot of people have not been talking about is Anthony Lynn being the run game coordinator and really scheming up runs for Cliff Kingsbury so he doesn't have to worry about it. We saw what that looked like in Arizona. So, but I think that this is the matchup and the way that this game plays out. I think this is a pass heavy game, and Brian Robinson goes on the under versus Baltimore.
Cody, I like that. I like that a lot. I think it's going to get you off the schneid. And the reason I like it is it reminds me of that Commanders Bengals game where Anarumo clearly, we actually in the app took Robinson on the over rushing yards. The model liked it in that game. And Anarumo just said, I'm not going to let you beat me with the run. And so Daniels just beat him with the pass. But I would be shocked if the Ravens defense doesn't do the same thing, and then the Commanders don't deploy a similar game plan.
Yeah, I agree with you. My over-under pick, I'm going to go with Arizona versus the Packers. I'm going to go with that as an over. Arizona's defense is not that good. They're one of the worst defenses in the NFL, especially against the pass. And then you have a kind of they're going to go after it in the passing. And the one thing about LaFleur is that he's so good at mixing runs and passes and getting the defense kind of in a position where they don't know what's coming. The Green Bay, that's been one of the issues. Green Bay has a much, much better defense, but they are susceptible to big plays. They are susceptible outside of Xavier McKinney, Jair, who's playing at an elite level. They can't figure out who corner number 2 is. I think I've talked about this back in the summer. That's going to be a huge issue for them. Jair Alexander's coming off of an injury. He's probably going to mirror Marvin Harrison Jr. I just have a feeling like they're going to be able to get some things off. Kyler Murray is kind of when you're just going to rush 4, he's going to find a scramble lane. This has a shootout written all over it.
Yeah. And Jordan Love hasn't been afraid to give the ball to the other team a little bit, which can cause some scoring scenarios for both sides. In that case, it's been kind of feast or famine with him. So I don't hate it, Cody.
I don't hate it either. The model loves it. I think it's one of the biggest variances we've seen in an over-under number the entire season. My only concern is the Cardinals have, like, we have a couple games now where we thought they were going to move the ball a ton and they just didn't. We thought that against the Lions, right? And I think that was like a 20-16 or 20-13 game. And we thought that against the Commanders. And it was the same thing. Like they weren't able to move the ball. So they seem, I don't know. They seem a little, and you scheme-wise would know better than me, but they seem a little finicky in terms of, like, if people can bottle up Kyler Murray, right, then they can shut them down. So that's the only thing that gives me pause.
Yeah, no, you just think about it. It's very inconsistent, the way that they played. I really think the Commanders game was a little bit fluky. I just think that they just got out so early. Kyler Murray is not a drop back passer. And when you force him to essentially have to be a drop back passer and play, pass all the time, I just don't think that's going to work. I do think that they're going to be able to get the ground game going a little bit against the Packers, which should help him out. That was the only reason why I looked at that. And I was like, I looked at our model. I was like, that makes sense to me. That tracks with me. My game pick, I think New England actually covers Houston. I know I talked glowingly of Houston, but they are going to be out Nico Collins. I do think that they don't score as much as a lot of people are thinking. +7 is a big number in the NFL. They're going to have now I get this. They're going to have a rookie quarterback, but I do think anytime you kind of inject hope into an organization, I do think the defense plays relatively well. I think they match up relatively well defensively against what Houston is trying to do. So this is a game that I could see New England covering. Do I think they're going to win? No. But do I think that they keep it within 7? Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. The over-under on that game is 37.5. One of at least 3 that I see they're in the 30s this week with the Steelers, Raiders, and the Broncos, Chargers. So a lot of rock fights getting ready to happen this weekend, or at least Vegas thinks so.
Well, the numbers in terms of dogs of 6 or 7 or more points this year have been very good. Let's start with that. Especially when those dogs are at home. I think they're going to get some energy from Drake May. I like that a lot.
Just to put some context around what you're saying, I saw it the other day. 7.5 or more point dogs are 8-1 against the spread this year, and 7-2 outright. Meaning 7 out of the 9 times someone's been more than a 7.5 point dog, they've actually won the game.
This year's been crazy, yes.
It terrifies me to bet on the Patriots, but I think that's a smart bet. I think Cody's going 3-0 this week. It only takes two straight 3-0 weeks to get back to 500,
That's
Cody.
right. That's right. That's why you gamble, right? I get it back.
Yeah. Always chase your losses. I think that's what Kurt Warner says on the commercial.
And you place bigger bets.
Yeah,
Right.
always chase your losses.
Double down.
We're joking, people. We support responsible gambling here at Field Division Sports.
Scott, you got some picks?
Yeah, I'll start with my player prop. I am not straying. The other thing we didn't talk about here, we as a team talked about a lot yesterday, is the Thursday night game is pretty good. And we don't get a lot of good Thursday night games. But Niners Seahawks, both teams coming off a loss, division rival. I think it's a really interesting game. I'm sticking with the pick that we made yesterday, which is Kenneth Walker over rushing yards. If you were in the app when we picked it, it was at 56.5. I believe that number is already up to 59. Strategically, the Seahawks don't actually run that much, but they're really efficient when they run. And I would expect to see them put 3-4 wide receivers out into a spread, but use that to spread out the Niners defense and run. And so I'm taking Kenneth Walker over rushing yards tomorrow night, or I guess by the time people are listening to this, tonight against the 49ers.
That's amazing. I concur.
Hey, thanks for your guys' enthusiasm about my pick.
Yeah. I mean, if Seattle can get some control of the game, they're going to want to run the ball. The Niners are built to give up the run and stop the pass. So I think Kenneth Walker has the opportunity to hit that number tonight.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll see. We'll know early. My game pick, I'm going to dovetail off of what we talked about earlier. I had 2 in there, but one of them involves Will Levis, which makes me very uncomfortable and only slightly more uncomfortable than one of them involving Bo Nix. But I'm going to go the Broncos +3, the Broncos to cover +3 at home against the Chargers. And we don't need to belabor it. All the reasons we talked about, I don't think based on what those teams have put on the field, the Broncos are 5.5 to 6 points worse than the Chargers. I really like what they're doing as a whole system, and particularly on defense. Like, I don't see Justin Herbert in that offense getting to more than 17 points. So the Broncos just got to get to 20.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, Bo Nix has gotten better every single week. Vegas is telling you like that game's going to be a slog. It's a 35.5 point over under. If that's going to be the case, if the game's played like under 20 for both teams, usually games like that are going to come down to a field goal or less. So it makes sense to take the points.
Yeah. All right. Let's take them. I'm taking them. My last pick, and Sasha, you will tell me if this is illegal, because and I'll adjust if it is.
If you have to ask, it is.
It's supposed to be an over/under. Can I just take the Ravens over their point total, or do I have to take the whole game?
29.5. Yeah,
Screw
go
it.
ahead.
Give me the whole game. Ravens Commanders over. The Commanders have not let us down on an over in several weeks. So it's a big number. I think 51.5 last time I saw it, but just give me Ravens Commanders over.
Felix, are you writing these down? You can just nod. All right. Fair enough. I want it documented when Scott and Cody go 1 and 2 each. I'll give them each 1 win.
Dude,
so.
I can almost
That's
guarantee I'm going 3-0 this week.
You can
when
guarantee
you
it.
go 0-3, Sasha, you'll be, what is that, 5-4 total, and I will be 6-3 total ahead of you.
Good luck. The Ravens offense, it does have the strongest signal in our app. We're projecting them to 33.1 points over their 29.5 point total, plus 12%. So that's it's a good pick, Scott. I'm proud of you.
I thought because of that, I looked a little bit at that Ravens cover, but as we talked about, like dogs of 6.5 more points are just not a safe bet.
Okay. Here it goes. Here goes nothing. I got CeeDee Lamb against the Lions secondary over 93 yards. He has an advantage in field area, scheme, blitz, personnel, and a home field advantage, according to our app. So basically he's green on every single area. In addition to that, I was just looking at CeeDee's little player card as well. And this might sound counterintuitive, but he's only getting a 21% target share this year so far. And I think that number is really low for him. I think that corrects itself and kind of regresses to the mean a little bit. So I look for CeeDee to get a lot of targets against the Lions and get more than that 5 receptions a game that he's averaging right now. So I like CeeDee Lamb over 93 passing or receiving yards.
I like it.
Yeah, it's a lot of green on that matchup profile. I agree with you. The question is how much Dak hates him. No, serious question.
I mean, I really think that they're going to have to get, I mean, they have no one else. no one else. You've got to get him the ball. I think that's clear. That they probably are looking at it feeling like they probably left some things on the table without targeting him. To me, I think you're right. Now, the only caveat to that is I don't think the Cowboys have won a home game this year.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Cody, or Scott, actually, anyone who has the information. Do we have a Micah Parsons injury update?
What's interesting about that, and they were talking about that on the radio here, was that without Micah, they're actually playing a little bit better run defense, which anybody that has talked to you about that that's kind of been one of the things that has kind of been his problem is kind of the run game. He's an elite pass rusher, one of the best in the NFL, but in terms of run against, people will run at him. From what I see is that he's almost close to return. So I think it's still pretty much questionable whether he's going to play this week or not.
Okay. Well, the reason
our threat ratings would support him not being good in the run game, which everyone was mad about over the summer, but it's true.
The reason I ask is the last time we saw Jared Goff on a field, he was 18 for 18. Putting up 43 points against the Seahawks. And I like the Lions Cowboys over. It is, the number is, let me get it here. The number is 52.5. So it's a big one. But Scott, you're giving me a little bit of a nod. Vegas knows something. They know that these teams are going to score points on each other. They wouldn't put the number that high if they didn't. They're begging you to take the under. I will not take the bait. We projected at 54.1 in the app. We see advantages for both teams in the passing game. The Cowboys haven't been great against the run either way. The Lions have that two-headed monster. They can get big plays in the run game, use the play action. I'll take the Lions Cowboys over 52.5.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, yeah. Cody did not tell me I'm stupid.
No, I like it. I think you're spot on. This is a game that is going to go over this will easily go over 50 points.
All right. You guys are going to like this last one.
It's just a huge number. 31-20 doesn't get you there. I guess 31-24 gets you there.
You guys will like this last one a lot. We talked about this team earlier, or actually we talked about this team's opponent earlier. Sunday Night Football, New York Giants, Cincinnati Bengals. The Giants, they're playing good football. The Bengals give up 87 points every single game. If they're going to win, it's going to be a close one. The Giants are getting 3.5 points at home. I'll take the New York Giants plus 3.5 to cover against the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday Night Football.
I think Dable's got Jones playing back to where he was a couple years ago. I mean, I think he's kind of figured out what they can do. This is a good defense to be playing in terms of getting yards. So I can see.
Scott has a theory on the Daniel Jones thing, but we'll save that for another time on why he's playing better.
Well, let me just oh, you're talking about the theory from yesterday. I do. Yeah. I do believe in that theory. What I will tell you is there's a chance if he doesn't hit his over tomorrow night, Deebo Samuel is going to replace Daniel Jones on our Field Vision do not bet list. So this is a chance for Daniel Jones to get out of the doghouse after he delivered us our first loss ever. But he actually has already delivered us one loss, which is a cover against the Cowboys last Thursday night.
One win. They did cover.
No, that's what I mean. One win. Yeah. So we're now one-on-one with Daniel Jones over the course of the season.
All right, fellas. We've got 3 picks apiece. Felix was writing them down. I wasn't, so I'm not going to go over what everybody's picks were. Any last words for the audience before we kick off Thursday Night Football tomorrow night?
Should be a fun one tomorrow.
Maybe you, Daniel Jones, and Kay Adams can go on a date together, Sasha.
You didn't just leave well enough alone. That's going to do it for the matchup by Field Vision Sports. Follow us on Twitter, on X, as they call it, at Field Vision MI, on Instagram, Field Vision Sports, and on our website, fieldvisionsports.com. Download the app. This has been the Matchup by Field Vision Sports. We'll see you next time. Take an ice bath, Scott.